Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. It's night one of a great conversation that's about to go down. And I said, you know what? All of you that will be watching us on YouTube, if you have not subscribed to this channel, please do it. Don't miss. Okay. We're moving into a new year, and we're going to talk about some things we learned this year. But I promise you, you won't regret subscribing to this channel. It's all about effective living. Now, I'm going to dive right into talk today because the lady I have joining me, she's a busy woman. She got things to do, and she's like, Ricardo Miller, I am giving you just about enough time to talk about these 20 lessons of mine. Siobhan Lloyd, blessings to you. How are you doing?
I am fantastic, and I'm really thrilled to be here as a part of this conversation on YouTube, Ricardo.
Hey, listen, we're going to have a great time because, this year has been a challenge for so many. I was thinking how persons prepared themselves for 2020, thinking, man, this is going to be a year of so many incredible things happening. I had plans to go to Paris. This was my 45th birthday year. Man, I had scheduled 10 trips to travel to the Bahamas, where you're located, and I only made one of them. Only made one. And right now, there is no plans for 2021 to come to the Bahamas. I may have to move some things around, but everything has changed. How are you been doing, and how's your family? And tell us a little bit about yourself in the midst of that.
Okay, awesome. Yes, you're definitely right. 2020 is supposed to be synonymous with 2020 vision. We're seeing clearer, we're advancing further, we're doing some great things. And just a bit about myself for your viewers. My name is Siobhan Lloyd. Ricardo's already said it. I am actually in human resources as a profession. I've worked there for over 20 years, and currently I serve as the vice president of one of our insurance companies here locally. And prior to that, I was the head of human resources for CIBC, which is an international bank with, of course, branches in the Bahamas. So I would dare say that there were great plans from a business perspective, from a personal perspective as well, for 2020. But I don't want to jump in too quickly. I'll let you ask me a couple of questions. But in retrospect, at the end of 2020, while there were so many things that were challenging and, dare I say, even obstacles for many persons, including ourselves, there is still so much to be learned from that whole year, this whole year, and I just can't wait to talk about it.
Now, the Bahamas, I love the Bahamas. I'm from the Bahamas. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're watching from anywhere in the world, when this lift happens, when this pandemic is behind us, please schedule a visit to the Bahamas, because it's the place where God lives. And it's just splendid. It's beautiful. But, man, no cruise ship, no junk canoe, major resorts closed. This is major.
That was that was crazy. I mean, just to think, no one could have had the foresight to say, listen, this is what 2020 was going to be about. And you think about the job losses. Working in human resources, you really get a sense of how valuable job security is and what a hit unemployment took. I mean, you talk about the hotels, right? Some of the major employers in the Bahamas, they were closed for months. And so many people who hitherto, the first 2 months of the year were working, found themselves suddenly in a place where they were on food lines. It was just so difficult to see. And I think even as a country, our governments across the world really grappled with how do we respond to this ever and changing environment.
Yes, it's been major. I'm looking forward to 2021. And the things we're going to be able to establish for new normalcy. I don't think we're going back. I think there will be an established way moving forward that we will have all learned how to now live with some of the things that COVID-19 would have cost us to establish as the new way of doing certain things.
Mm-hmm.
But I want us to dive right into to this talk because we I invited a few other people this week to join us, and someone said, "Man, you sending me to work for 20 things, 20 lessons." And I said, "Oh my goodness, I know you got 20 lessons. I mean, you can tell me 20 things right now."
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm
Mm-hmm.
interested in hearing your lesson. But before you do that, you started to give us a little bit background on who you are. I know your husband, you're a family woman. Just give us a little bit more.
Okay, sure. Yes, sure. I'm a mother. I'm a wife.
Yeah.
My husband, he is a pastor in one of the local assemblies, and I serve as a minister in that regard as well. My singing background is, dates back years and years and years.
Yeah.
Recording albums and that type of thing, just from a personal standpoint. And then professionally, having spent the majority of my work experience in business and working with leaders in those businesses to help them navigate challenges and obstacles.
Yes.
And this was one of the toughest ones yet.
Yeah, I can't imagine. I can't imagine. Well, Mr. Watt, let's dive right into our talk. One of the things that I came about, a thought that's been working in my head and just marinating and sitting there, is that when you pass the test, you don't have to retake the exam. And when you pass the test, you don't have to retake the exam. And I believe that this year, a lot of people find themselves dealing with life's greatest tests for them up to this point. But I think if you don't reflect on what has occurred, you don't get to really enjoy the benefit of moving forward, because when you start thinking back, look what I survived,
Yeah.
And it did not take me out. It did not take me out. It didn't destroy my marriage. It didn't destroy my health. It didn't destroy my mind. You know what I'm saying? I'm still, the old people used to say, I'm still in my right mind.
Yes.
And so with that said, I thought it's important for us to bring some people on our Effective Living platform that will introduce the thought pattern of what did I learn this year?
Yeah.
And hopefully I learned the lesson so good enough that I don't have to repeat the class.
Yeah.
So let's dive right in. And go ahead.
That is so good. That is so good. I'm ready. I'm diving with you.
Dive in. Let's dive in. So let's go on. First and second thing that really stood out to you this year, 2020, COVID-19 year, pandemic year, lockdown year, no Junkanoo year. Come on.
Yeah, and I try to segment it into various compartments.
Yep.
Just about what we would have been learning, right? So what comes to mind is the work, and then family. And as you know, I would have been doing a bit of schooling, and I'm a person of faith, so that was very important to me.
Yeah.
So in terms of the work side of things, one of the lessons I learned was the value of forward thinking. This whole pandemic caught the world by surprise, right?
Yeah.
But there were some businesses that were further ahead in terms of their technology than others.
Yeah.
And so that forward thinking put them in a better position of preparedness versus other institutions.
Yeah.
And so, that value of forward thinking was very, very important. And I think it played out in terms of which businesses were able to actually survive through the pandemic, So that was one of the most valuable things I saw. So that's number one.
Yeah.
And then the second thing was the value of prioritization.
Wow.
You have so many things going on in a business. And when you think about it, there you have strategic priorities that in a normal circumstance you run with, and you pace yourself, what's going to happen in quarter one, quarter two, three, four, etc. But then you have a pandemic that kind of upends everything that you were thinking of doing, perhaps in Q1, right? And so you had to realign your priorities to adjust to what was happening in terms of the business environment because of COVID and 2020. So that was the second valuable lesson that really stood out tremendously, that value of prioritization.
Yep.
And I have a couple. You can jump in when you want.
Now, hold on. I like this because I think a lot of people didn't realize where their priorities were up to this point.
Mm-hmm.
I think COVID-19 revealed a lot. I think the pandemic revealed a lot, and so both first point, second point. If you're watching today, go ahead and write in the chat for us what stood out to you for what Ms. Siobhan is mentioning. Also, what has been a lesson learned for you. So I want to see, we have people from the Bahamas joining us already. They're diving in.
Awesome.
And so if you're anywhere in the world, let us know where you're watching from. But what lessons have you learned as you're watching us? But I like your 1 and 2. I love them. I love them. Continue.
Well, I have 18 more to go. Actually, I have 19 more to go. So let's go into 3.
Yeah.
The value of excellent communication in a crisis.
Yeah. Wow.
There are so many people, especially in business, who were grappling with what they needed to do. And, where should they go for the information, and who did they need to ask? Who did they need to touch base with and connect with for the various services that they needed, the things that were normal and usual and you take for granted, those things aren't as available anymore. How is it that I need to get things done? And so you really recognize that excellent communication was really critical to have the direction and the guidance needed to just do some simple things because of the changes and the protocols and the priorities.
Now, but before you move on, because excellent communication, I mean, the depth of that, there are people who thought, you know what, when I get to work, I can talk to my boss. Now they have to communicate in a different format. There were people who once said something and thought that they were being heard, but didn't realize that everything has shifted. And the truth is, not because you sent an email, that the person got the email and the text and the phone call and the eye contact and the you all caps sent a communication to me. Which are you angry with me? Because excellent communication. There's so much to look at communication now. That's been a major one. Thank you very much. What was one of the ones that you found to be your greatest joy in enhancing your communication skills during this time? Is it the virtual dynamics, or was it the ability to now use more technology? I mean, what comes to mind?
Really the virtual dynamics, because for our team, whilst we had regular meetings face to face, when we were suddenly forced to work remotely, what we did was we transitioned to daily briefings, virtually, right?
Yep, right.
And then we had our action items list going. We knew exactly what each team member was doing, what team member one's duties how it would impact team member two's, and what were the synergies that we needed to create. And until we knew, what was happening and we were really moving in a great rhythm, we continued to meet daily, first thing in the morning, to make sure that communication was tight, because things were changing so rapidly. When you have that break in communication, that's a recipe for things to slip through the cracks, right? So I think that pivot was critical in us being successful as a team.
Excellent. Let's dive on into
All right. Okay, and then the fourth one was the value of the technology and being able to make online payments, where, you know, we had to actually do some upgrades and fast track some things that weren't high on the priority list.
Ooh.
So it connects, right? So we connected with that, the remote work, you know, in sending such a large population of the workforce to work from home. You're looking at, you know, their internet connectivity now. You know, did they have computers? Did they have laptops of their own? What was the level of their bandwidth? All of the things that you take for granted because you're able to subsidize that at work. You now have a whole population and productivity that could be impacted if you don't address that technology side in the home.
Yeah.
So that was one of the things. I
gotta say something on that, because you know, I come home to the Bahamas often, and I've noticed that for some reason, persons haven't adapted to the online banking as much as online banking has come to a thriving state in the world. And so the lines on Fridays and Thursdays, you don't want to go to the bank for the large number of people. So that is a lesson learned for a lot of people. They had to learn how to set up their online account. They had to learn how to pay their bills online. And isn't it easier? Isn't there so much more there that brings a level of ease to our life?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it's nothing like being able to do these things for your phone, your computers, your laptops, and not having to stand on a line that's wrapping around the building because you have to be 6 feet apart.
Yes.
You know? So it was really profound. And then even as a business, we had to make sure that there were effective channels available for our clients. To make their changes in their payment habits, right? The fifth thing for work is the value of employee engagement. Critical. You have teams across the business who are working from various spaces, and the expectation when we are doing work, there's still a level of expectation of recognition, of a pat on the back, the thank you, you know. Of people understanding that it's a job well done, or what coaching has to happen. And so what we would have done was moved our recognition, a good part of our recognition, online, right? Online via Zoom. Digitization was just the order of the day, and it worked. We had, you know, Zoom happy hours. We had Zoom parties. We even had a Zoom Christmas party. Right? Across the islands of the Bahamas, you know, so it really, really just said to us, you know, there is a different way of working that we need to embrace. And that value of employee engagement was right up there for me as one of my top 5 lessons.
You know, I love your top 5. I was thinking 2 years ago, I was trying to do a multi-island summit. Okay, and we were talking four islands all at once simultaneously, and someone says 2 of those islands ain't gonna watch no screen. Okay, you ain't gonna get nobody to be trained through screen, and to know now, roughly maybe 2.5 years later, that we were able to host that event and not hit only 4 islands, but we were able to hit some 11 islands, because between between March and October, when we hosted the event this year, everybody had become accustomed now to accepting the virtual side of training and development. So you're so right.
Absolutely. And even if I were to add a 6th one, you talk about training and development, and the value of e-learning became more pronounced. So you're getting some bonuses, right? There was a significant transition to the online platforms. And I would dare say, from a work environment, you encountered a significant savings from utilizing that opportunity that was created, right?
Correct.
So that's 6. All right.
Go for it. Go for it.
All right. So in the family realm, the value of agility was critical. I mean, when you're trying to manage work from home, schooling from home, making those lunches, and, you know, just having all of those virtual connections come together in one space, there was a continual adjustment and agility and pivot that had to have been made. Because I think even for the education system, besides businesses, the educational system really had a shock to its system. And so that impacted us as parents, right? And the students themselves. So that agility really applied actually throughout the spheres. If I could say, if there were one value that would have transcended the workspace, the school space, all of those spaces, it would be agility, that ability to pivot, right?
That's so good.
And then secondly, in that space of family, the value of balance.
Wow.
You know, knowing that, you know, the children needed their parents to help them to navigate that transition that came upon them so suddenly. And knowing that the demands of your work would still be demanding, although you're working remotely. And then the other responsibilities that you have, striking that balance and knowing that balance was valuable was one of the key lessons that I learned as well in 2020. And then also, thirdly, the value of space. For me, it was like, you know, each child, having 3 children in the home, as well as a husband and wife, both of whom are working, you really need separate spaces. You know, because the teachers, they are teaching for their class and their class alone. And that really came home to us, that each child needed a separate space. Both my husband and I needed a separate space to work effectively. So that was the third thing. And then fourthly, the value of creativity. Using what you have to generate what you want. Right?
Yes.
So that there wasn't, and I'll just leave it there, because you know that covers such a great spectrum, and I think that's one of them actually that covers and transcends all areas, that creativity, because you had to find a resourceful way to do things differently. And then fifthly, the value of saving. Right. So that goes again in a lot of spheres. Many jobs were impacted. And really and truly, the fact of the matter is the saving comes before the impact. So you recognize in hindsight how important savings would have been, right? And then to try and look at ways, even though there may have been reductions in certain families in terms of income, how is it that I can save 10 cents or a dollar out of this $10? You know, how is it that we could still make it work, even though it may have to be reduced, but keeping that discipline going, you know, across the spectrum. So the value of savings was a critical one as well. That's 5. I still had 2.
So we're on 10, right? We're at 10.
We're on 10, but effectively I've already given you 11.
I know. I'm watching. Listen, ladies and gentlemen, we're talking today about 20 lessons learned over this past 12 months. Okay, and I'm joined with Minister Siobhan Lloyd, and she is sharing her 10 so far and 20 in general, and I think we're going to get a bonus 1 or 2 in the midst of them. So thank you for that. But let's before you go on with the others, you know, there were persons who they came into this year, they've become accustomed at a certain time of the year to spend money at a certain type of way and to live with a certain type of swagger. Let me use that term, right? But they got laid off, and the national insurance check kicked in, right? But they did not project that this thing was, they did not foresee that this was in a 90-day situation. This is, and eventually you got the national insurance check starting to have its challenges, and you don't have those kin folks you can call. And it's interesting, you placed that there, and as you mentioned, this was something you should have actually been doing prior to see the positive benefits of having done it. And so I'm hoping persons watching this understands that this season will pass and a season of plenty will enter again. We're going to have that moment of you looking at what you've acquired, but you must remember times like this. Get the lesson while you can that you should be preparing for drought. You got to be preparing for a storm. You got to be preparing for uncertain situations and circumstances that could come that we cannot foresee. So let's go on, Ms. Siobhan. Let's do this. Let's hear the
All
rest
right.
of it.
All right. So I have a couple more that I'm going to put in there. That I'm going to go over to school and university now, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in that space, what I learned was the value and what was reinforced, because I knew it, but that lesson was so poignant this year, the value of goal setting.
Yeah. Wow.
You look at doing that at the beginning of the year and you're working toward that. There may be some obstacles, and certainly this year was one of those years where you had some major upheaval, right? And challenges and difficulties. But nonetheless, having that goal allows you to work at that incrementally, even though there may be some challenges facing you and confronting you, right? So the second thing was the lessons, it was the value of focus. Because you have that goal, you have challenges that are presented to you, you have difficulties that you have to overcome, but keeping laser focus.
Come on. Yes.
Was critical in being successful. Just being able to run the race, finish the race, finish strong. We're going to be winning. Focus was critical. Then thirdly, go ahead.
Before you go there, let's talk about a couple of things that you find yourself. You have to tell yourself, I'm not going to get distracted. I hear the noise in the market. I could see all that's happening in our nation on TV. I have friends who are WhatsApping me and telling me all, but I'm going to stay focused. Talk to us about one of those things you had to tap into, that laser focus and not get distracted by all that was happening around.
Well, for your viewers and some of those persons who may be on who know me well, I have been pursuing a doctoral degree for the last few years. And this was toward the end of that process, right? This year, 2020 is the year. I'm finishing. I'm January. This is it. 2020. This is it. And here comes all of these things, that the pandemic and the change in work life and working from home. And listen, there is just a complete shift. And I said to myself, I cannot allow 2020 to pass without being finished with this.
Yes.
I'll tell you what I started to do. I called in the troops in terms of that accountability to remain focused on the goal. I called in a coach, one effective living coach. You may know him. I called in. I had some nieces, some relatives who were also doing studies like for bar exams and that type of thing that required them to be up 2 and 3 o'clock in the night from 9. I said, okay, listen, once I'm off from work and the children are fed and, I can get up, I will stay up on the phone with you. I will work on my end. You will work on your end to make sure this happens. My husband kept me in. My mother kept me in. Are you there yet? Are you finished yet? How's it going? So there was an accountability team around me to help me maintain that focus during that period, So that's one of the things I would say to anybody who may have a goal that they need to achieve. It's always so important to have that coach or that team around you who is helping you to stay accountable to the goal that you've set. Right. So the third item, though, would be the value of resilience.
Wow.
And that, again, it was a part of the process, because initially with the transition to remote work, that was like maybe 2 weeks. Oh, I don't feel like doing this. I don't. And you can't go with your feelings. You can't go with your emotions. You got to be disciplined and get it done. And so you get back up and say, listen, I'm in this to win this.
Yes.
Let's move forward. I hope my pastor probably could hear me now. In it to win it, yes, Apostle Wells.
Yes. Yes.
So the value of resilience, and then the value of along with that is not giving up, not quitting. Even I heard the Queen in her message and her Christmas message talked about sometimes the darkest day may just be before the dawn.
Yes.
And so do not give up. We're going to succeed. We're going to do this. The fourth thing was the value of continuous learning.
Yeah.
You can't stop learning.
Yeah. Yeah.
I read something very, very recently that the brain actually can continue to grow if you expand it through knowledge.
Yes. Wow. Yeah.
So there is no time that you shouldn't that you shouldn't be reading or just getting nuggets.
Yes.
Throughout the process, right?
Yep.
And then the last thing I think.
Hold on, before you do that, I want to jump in on that one because I know that there have been people. I went to Mexico a few years ago, and I have a mentor there, and he's 81, 82, and I was just turning 40 at the time, and I remember saying to him, well, give me another 15 years. 15 years, I'm gonna start winding down. And he said, what did you just say? I said, another 15 years. And he said, boy, Ricardo, how old are you? I said, I'm about to be 40, and I'm 45 now. And he said, do you know that you could possibly have another 40 in front of you? It was a light bulb moment for me. Not only was that one of the statements he said, but he says, you need to start building yourself for your next 40. With that said, this year revealed to those who decided that after they got their degree initially, or they finished high school, they got that initial job, they checked out. And now COVID-19, the pandemic happened, and the bank is saying, come online. The water bill company, the mortgage company is saying, the teachers are saying, you got to stream in and do this with your kids. And they're like, I don't know this stuff. Well, guess what? I like what you said. The commitment to continually getting engaged with information that brings you to a more current, modern way of living is critical. And so I think a lot of people definitely have been pushed to get back online and start studying so that they don't be left behind. Because another thing is, there are some companies that close that won't open back up the way they did because they discovered that virtual will provide that service and they don't need the same amount of manpower.
It's true.
So for those persons who are just doing it, whereas the computer now can do it, some of those people, they're young enough to go back. Watch this. They realize they're not of the age to check out. So you're going to have to upgrade your skill by continually learning. So that is so good. Go ahead, Mr.
Yeah. And the last one is the value of asking questions, right? Yeah. I think in 2020, there were a lot of things that we were proficient and expert in.
Yeah.
But there were also some things we had to learn and ask for help.
Yeah.
With learning in this new environment for 2020. So I thought that was a really valuable lesson as well.
Real good. Real good. Go ahead. Keep on.
All right. So faith and, spiritually, the value of prayer. Oh, my God.
Yeah.
To stay balanced.
Hey, but the thing about it is, when we were asked to stay at home, for those who understand the importance of getting away and being able to shut down, it was demanded of us to stay in the confinement of our homes. And I mean, for someone who understands the power of prayer and what it can do for the strengthening of your walk and surviving any challenging situation, I mean, a lot of people had to have gotten on their knees again. It was a definite wake-up call for prayer.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because no one had the answers.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, the scientists didn't, the government didn't, right. Nobody had the answers. The economists didn't, so I had to turn to someone who I knew was here before the pandemic, will be here after the pandemic, and understands the pandemic itself, and so really and truly that is my mainstay. The value of prayer was reinforced tremendously during this time. The value of reading as well.
Yeah.
I always, the word of God says God is the same yesterday, today, and forever.
Yeah.
And finding that moment, that space, that
Yeah.
quiet time
Yeah.
to read was critical as well.
Yeah.
That meditation and quiet.
Yeah. Critical.
I will tell you, I remember getting up early one morning and I actually heard the birds
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
chirping.
Yeah.
And I mean, I looked around
Yeah.
and I realized that in the busyness of life,
Yeah.
you
Wow.
don't take sufficient quiet time
Yeah.
to really reflectively think,
Yeah.
and meditate. And so that was one of the key lessons, having that space, having that quiet time
Yeah.
to really grow and reflect.
Yeah.
And the fourth lesson was the value of fellowship.
Mm.
It
Wow.
wasn't until you couldn't go out
Yeah.
to touch and, connect
Yeah.
that you realized how important that fellowship is and was.
Yeah.
And so I value that all the more.
Yeah.
And I would dare say the fifth thing would be the value of building good relationships.
Shit. Come on. Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because those relationships, are where, you can find solace in difficult times.
Yeah. Yeah.
There were so many challenges. You
Yeah.
have to know who you
Yeah.
can lean on, who you can
Yeah.
call on,
Yeah.
and so that was one of the key lessons as well, the value of building great relationships for the
You know,
fifth.
before you go on, lately I've been praying for those persons who find themselves having to work from home, but their jobs and their churches were the only place where they got connected to community. And so it was the people at work, and then there was the people at church, and maybe let's just say a fitness center or a Kiwanis club or a Toastmasters program, but all of those things shut down. And you don't really have friends outside of those environments. I've started praying for those people because there are a lot of people who find themselves in that state. And so relationships and friendship and having community is so, so important. And I think this year helped us to understand that, listen, as much as we can stay connected somewhat through social media and seeing what people are doing, it's still not the same as having that girlfriend or that guy friend or that mom, that brother, that, you know what I'm saying, that person from work who is following up on checking up, and y'all are connecting, and the Zoom connection. This year we did something like a Zoom family birthday celebration for two of my aunts, and I saw cousins I haven't seen in years.
Yeah.
And so I'm telling you, there's so much that we could have captured from now knowing that we live for community. We're supposed to be a part of a community. And for those persons who may have not taken the time to develop relationship, make sure moving into 2021, you're going to build yourself your village. They say it takes a village. I think it takes a village to live life effectively.
Yeah.
Okay? I think it takes a village to live life effectively. Go ahead.
And I'll have you to know that is actually 21
Yeah.
lessons.
Are we done?
Yes.
Look at that. Oh, come on. See, I wasn't counting. I started to just dive in, and I was listening, and I was trying to like pay attention. I need a full team. One of the things in 2021, I need a team so someone can help me do some other things so that I can. Esther Marina, one of my coaching, she takes notes while she's watching, but I'm looking at me and I'm like putting my head and I'm like, it doesn't look good on the screen. So I'm having to stay focused. And so you are finished. Thank you so much. That's so good.
And let me tell you, there is so much more depth in that. There's actually another one, there's a bonus one I just gave, and this is a bonus second one.
Yes.
And you talked about the new normal, right? And we've been speaking about that quite a bit.
Yeah.
But there is also a value to maintaining a sense of normalcy in the proper and correct places.
Yeah. Yes.
And one of those things was, and you gave the example about a virtual party I had written, was a celebration.
Yeah.
Celebrating a birthday or celebrating some significant accomplishment. There has to
Yes.
be a normalcy around those things,
Yes.
whereby you may do it differently, but you
Yes.
continue the celebration.
So good.
So that was one of the things. And
I,
I would say, go ahead. You wanted to
no,
jump
no,
in?
I want you. Go ahead. Go ahead.
All right,
Yes.
awesome. And one of the things I can think of was when I did the final defense this year,
Yeah.
in the month of November. Oh man, we were so thrilled. We were so excited. Like, I mean,
Yes.
running around the house, and you know, we were so grateful that we had come to the conclusion of what had been a 4 or 5 year process
Yeah.
for an entire program. And although at that time we couldn't go out to celebrate, we sought ways in the house
Yeah.
to kind of recognize it in the house and in the family. So that normalcy around taking time to be present
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
celebrate
Yeah.
those big and small accomplishments
Yes.
is something that needs to be continued as a value. And I learned that in 2020 as well.
Nice. Nice. You know, ladies and gentlemen, tonight we want you to take some time out and to reflect on what is it that you have learned. Okay. I think one of the things I like that last one you mentioned, because I think even celebrating the very smallest of things, you did not, prior to COVID-19, you did not have an email. Prior to COVID-19, you did not know anything about the cloud. You didn't have an online bank account. Celebrate. Call a friend and say, I'm coming up. I'm growing and I'm going. Now, here's it is. Someone may laugh and say, oh, you should have had that 10 years ago. I'm not worrying about what I should have had 10 years ago. I'm saying today, I have it. You're growing, you're learning, and you're celebrating the journey. Thank you very much, Siobhan Lloyd, for taking the time out and providing us with your 20 plus lessons. Your 20, and you did it in an exceptional time. I mean, the time factor was just phenomenal. But we wanted to do this, and I'm hoping those of you that are watching go back and listen and take notes, and then ask yourself, where are you in regards to what she mentioned? And so there is a lot to learn from this conversation. This what we've just done. Persons can go back and grab a hold of what they need to make sure going into 2021, you got to commit to, I'm going to improve in every area of my life. And I'm going to learn the lesson that some others have learned that they are now teaching that I can learn. In closing, remember this: experience is not the best teacher. It's learning from someone else's experience. And so you can avoid a lot of pitfalls if you simply learn from someone who have been through a bunch of them already. This week, we'll be giving a whole slate of what we have learned to ensure that others who need to elevate from the experiences that we've captured will live life effectively. Siobhan, thank you again for joining us. Hey, is there any way persons can follow you, connect with you, and be a part of anything that you have coming up in the new year?
Oh, awesome. Yes, of course. We have our Facebook page, Transformational Consultancy, and we have our website. You can go on there, tcgconsultants.com. We have a YouTube channel where you can see some of our RISE conversations.
Yeah.
This year we had the RISE virtual conference. We're going to have that again next year. We're actually also having professional coaching going into next year, and our RISE moments for mentoring. So you can follow us on our Facebook page, check us out on our YouTube page, as well as on our website, tcgconsultants.com.
Excellent. Once again, thank you very much for joining us. Tomorrow night, guys, we'll have another conversation with guests every week, actually, this week. We're going to be talking about the 20 lessons we have learned in 2020. God bless you guys. Have a good night. Don't forget to share and subscribe to this channel. Bye-bye.